Women on Change family, Lexima Jeanose here. How are you? I believe you have what it takes to earn your blank, whatever that blank is. I believe you have what it takes to use your voice to change and live a peaceful life. That's my hope for you. And you have it within you because we all have it in us. However, depending on your life experiences, it can be hard to actually seize that moment. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So, what does it take to lead and earn your blank? Your voice, your ability to live freely, your ability to be at peace, your ability to experience the world. And what I can tell you is that from experience, learning about the challenges in communities around the world, talking to mothers, women, young women in particular, and just the let me put my headset from here so we can eliminate some noise here. I'll do it after this video because it's not right here. Yeah, so your ability to actually decide that this is a step that you want to go through is important. For me, I came to a period in my life where the job I was doing, the place I was living, the people I was around, they just didn't connect, right? I still love them, right? But it just didn't connect. So, and this started, oh my gosh, a while ago. And I was just trying to find that meaning of life. I just didn't feel fulfilled. There's something, and this started maybe my early 30s. And I remember talking to a guy friend of mine who was visiting me from California at the time. And I was trying to explain to him, and I was going through some medical stuff too during that period. And I'm not sure if the state that I was in triggered some of those things. But I was explaining to him how I was feeling, and he seemed a little confused at the time. And I remember telling him I'm in this process, and I was running a little business at the time as well, a rental business. And I was telling him, how I was feeling about certain things and so forth. And I just was going through the motions, right? But something else was calling me. There's just like something meaningful was sort of nagging there, and I just couldn't get it all around my head. So he seemed a bit confused, but that period I realized, oh my gosh, something had to change. And I remember this was probably around, I don't know, 20, oh gosh, it's early 30s. How old was I? I mean, how old was I what year was I? And when I was in my early 30s. But it's, almost 10 years ago that I started like this whole process. So this is when I started, I had a blog then. I was talking about some of those issues, power, politics, poverty, all these super P's, right? And I realized, you know what? I don't have to seek, I don't have to fight for all these things that everybody said you need. I mean, granted, you need a roof over your head, right? You need to be able to eat every day. Lucky me, I was able to do those things as I was going through this phase, and I feel so blessed for it. And one thing I've always been so grateful for is that I like to work. I like to find ways. I believe money is a tool. It's a tool that I believe we all need to recognize that it's a tool that needs to be managed. So to some extent, I'm grateful for that. From an early age, I've been exposed to money, and I've been able to learn to manage money. So at least the amount that I've been able to achieve. So I realized, okay, with the life that I had, 10 years ago, and then the life I had pictured my whole life as a kid, I imagined, and I realized how could I make this happen, because that's what my heart was saying, oops, that's what my heart was telling me to do. But I realized that I had to go through all this change, this self change. So I went through the process. It was a process. Okay, it was a process. First, you really have to be honest with yourself to be able to know what it is that, what does it take to actually lead and earn your blank. It's gonna take the will to do that. And when you get to a point where you realize that deep down inside, nothing fits, it's that time. And even though I think some people, they said people go through your breakthroughs or your healing steps or whatever, but ultimately, when you get to a point where you no longer, sometimes that's what it takes, when you no longer feel like anything is working, despite what people see, they see you have a home, they see you have a so-called good job, maybe great friends, nice relationships. But if inside something isn't working, none of those things matter. So you have to have the will for yourself to say something isn't working and I need to figure it out. So in my case, I remember I was working for a company at the time, and we went furlough. If you're a government contractor in the DC area at the time, government shutdown and so forth. The chaos that we're still dealing with today is that, companies, they can no longer work because they don't know if the government is going to be able to pay them. So I remember the company came to a halt maybe for like good 2 months or something. And then when they called me back to come back to work, we had to negotiate the rate, right? The amount of money I used to earn versus what they could afford to pay me. And I remember we having this discussion with one of my directors, asking me to take a 25% or 30% cut. And I still had the blog. It's just a blog then, I believe, but I was moving to the point where I wanted to do more, but I wasn't sure what it was. So what happened is I didn't take that job. I believe once I made the decision, I was actually, between that break, I wanted to go overseas. And when I asked them, after sitting like 2-3 months waiting on them, when they called back, and I said, I need an additional month off to be able to come back. If you want me to take that 30% cut and to start on X date. And I said, I will have to start on X date instead. And they said, well, we can't wait, blah, blah. And I said, okay, well, thank you for the opportunity. Then we part ways. And then since then, I've been on this journey trying to figure out what is it that is that disconnect that's within me. Like, I determined that I was going to invest everything I have to try to figure it out. And I find that, I think, in a way. So I had to have the will to be willing to say, this job for me was no longer working. The state that I was in, it wasn't the state that I was in. I think that place, everything, and people might call this, breakdown or whatever. But I remember it was sort of the same thing that happened to me when I had a depression, or when I got sick in college. I remember going to the school clinic, and this woman was telling me for the first time I had depression. So I went in and did so much reading and so forth about depression, didn't realize what it was. And then when I connected all, right, when I connected everything, I realized that if you're not happy inside, regardless of how much you try to be on the outside, it's not going to work, right? So I decided to make some changes. So to not keep going as I usually do, and I get excited talking about these things, but I think one of the things you have to be able to do to know that you do have what it takes to to earn your experiences, or to create juice that you can digest, right, easily and be at peace with, based on the things that you've experienced. And I think one of the things you have to be able to do is say, hey, who am I doing this for? Are you doing it for somebody else, or are you doing it for yourself? And I think for women in particular, too often we look outside ourselves, whether it's the kids, whether it's the husband, whether it's the family. And one thing I'm blessed with is that I don't have kids, I don't have a husband, so I didn't have that pressure. What I did have is that I realized it was just me, right? It was just me. And for so long I had so much on my shoulders, and I was like, you know what, this time this is about me, I need to figure it out. So I did that, and I realized not everyone has that. And of course, there's an economic component. So I did worst case scenario, what could I do, and so forth. And so, yeah, having the will is very important. And that will is going to help you. However, it's not enough. Having the will to take action is the beginning. But also connecting that to something bigger, I think, is even more important, right? So, for example, I truly believe that we all have to suffer. And I know suffer is an interesting word, but I would say that we all have to go through our own challenges to be able to reach certain things. And I think for me, very early on, I said to myself, I'm willing to do XYZ for as long as I can. But in reality, we just don't know. So I had to put those expectations aside. Like, I have to deal with what I'm dealing with and trust the universe. That's something I always struggled with. I always, because I came from an environment where I had to, carry others on my shoulders, I always felt like I had to be in control. I had to be in control. So whether it was, financial management, whether anything, I had to be in control. So I had to learn to let go of that. And that was the hardest thing for me. And it was the hardest thing because I felt like it was so much part of my identity, right? You grew up with certain things, whether it was lack of resources, particularly when it comes to money. You feel like you always have to do XYZ so you don't go through that. So knowing that I would be okay, right, with the resources that I had. And I have to admit, my family, sometimes I know they can be the hardest people because they see you changing. They don't really know what's going on and they think you're crazy, right? They're worried. But I have to say, for my family, one of the things that I've been able to enjoy, and I'm so blessed for, as huge as my family is that I've been able to stay with some of them for a period of time as I left the area where I was in for a while, right? So I was able to go places, and both overseas, and friends as well, both overseas and in the States. I've been able to get that. So that support network is also important because I truly believe that um, unless even people who are well off, right? They are sent to certain retreats and so forth. But in reality, we all have our network that we need. And I realized by going through that process is that not everyone has that. This is why a lot of the challenges, particularly folks with kids and young women or girls in particular, not having that support network is essential. So Women on Change is about creating that support network. So we can be more authentic, we can be ourselves, we can speak up when we need it, we can say, hey, I'm here for you sometimes. And I remember I would call friends, I was like, hey, I don't know what's up. I remember calling one of my friends. I was like, I really don't know what's going on, but so emotional. And I'm going through this process, right? Whatever it was, I just knew something had to change. So going through that change requires you. It literally breaks you down. I understand now what I call it, breakdown. You do, and it's not a bad thing. It makes you realize like what we're truly, what life is about. It's not about controlling or trying to hold on to that house that I have, or in this amount of money, or these type of people, but holding on to yourself, right? So the ability, people are important. Your network is important. So building that, not only early enough, so when you become a mom, and I know friends who've gone through divorces and so much, and you need that support network. And there are times you have to go through it. I'm not saying the whole time, but there are times you have to go through it on your own, because no one can actually understand, right? So I would say the first thing is having the will. The second thing is having that bigger goal, right? What is it that you, and maybe it's not a bigger goal, but it's having the hope that it will be okay. Because if you don't have that, it's going to be very hard to stick with that, the will to keep going through the process. And I would say thirdly is the fear, the thing that you fear the most as you go through this change or breakdown, as they call it, is that fear is really not a fear. That fear that you're feeling, or at least that I felt, the ability to make sure that I still have a home, or I still have this type of, maybe for some folks, it's getting the facials, it's getting the massages or the hair done, whatever it is for you, that luxury that you think you might be losing, that fear, it's essentially is what you need to let go, right? So if you fear that you may not be enjoying the lifestyle that you have, but if that's not working, what's the point of having that lifestyle, right? So once you have the will to go through it, and knowing that, hey, it will be okay. You truly have to believe that. You have to have that hopeful spirit that you got it, right? Because in reality, we all have and belong to a network. If we can really think about it, and if we're not afraid to reach out. And I would say lastly, overcome that fear. The biggest thing that you have to overcome is, again, in my case, is that fear is that, okay, I grew up poor. I had to always do for myself. I always have to be the one to do XYZ. I realized I didn't have to do that, right? Once I let that fear go, I become comfortable or uncomfortable and comfortable with the idea that things will be okay. And it was step by step where things I didn't think would work out. Like, I mean, even the pandemic, right? Or like that happened in 2019 when it came out. Something happened that was so crucial for me, but yet it worked out. So I learned to just, let that control off, right? It will be okay. And sorry, I told you guys, I'm dealing with a head cold. So the idea that what you fear may not exist, I would say the only thing that you have to fear is that there is nothing. Because if you can go to bed, what's the worst thing? It's that you get up or you don't get up. To me, that's just it. But once I got that over, once I actually accept that, or getting a call that, hey, one of my family members do not exist today, or they get a call that I no longer exist, whatever that is, I said the worst thing or the biggest, it's not even a fear, right? It's anything that is a fear. You realize that the fact that we are here on earth is that we will go one day, right? It's a matter of when. So once I got over that fear that I will be okay, life changed. Like not that I just don't care about certain things, but the way I used to think about, I need a certain amount of money to be able to make it out of certain, I let that go. The way I felt like I had to, the material things that I think too often, whether it was the clothes or like, let go. Like I managed to go from living a certain lifestyle to giving that up and to being so free, right? They said less is more. And I think if you're willing to dive into that, thinking that whatever you have today that makes you, that perhaps you not sure what that is, but if you feel like there's so much weight is on your on your shoulders, you have to think about, what are these weights? Are they my weight or are they other people's weight? And the more we learn to let go of what expectations people have for us, or we may have for ourselves, that many of them don't necessarily, or not necessarily healthy, then I think the more we'll feel free to let nature be, to let the world drive us. And I'm not saying don't don't have ambitions, right? I'm not saying don't have that. I have a lot of them, but I realized that what I was doing before, but I think I started as a professional. I started as a young professional, working after college. I was a professional before that, doing other things, but officially after college, I become this career professional woman. I realized none of those things made me happy, and I said, heck. In my early 30s, I think it started when I was like probably 26, 27, but after taking a trip to Europe and then I read a book, I think that's when it all changed. But ultimately, what does it take for you to create, lead, or earn whatever it is that you are aiming for? And you may not know, right? The key here is to, as you go through life, to try to balance what's yours and what is everything else that's put on you. And I think the earlier that we can help young women do that, the better off we are at breaking the generational cycles that is causing many of them to go through so much challenges that are preventable, right? There are so much challenges that young women and children are going through that are so preventable if we can give as many women possible before the age of 10, or many women, if they can get that tool before the age of 10, it can make a life, it can change everything. And I'm saying this based on the work that I realized that I did with young girls in particular, and you're going to see that through our report, is that their behavior, the confidence that they have about who they are, is based on what that environment want them to be. And you see this in the media. I mean, I shouldn't have to say this, but you see this in the media, you see this in the home, where so it starts in the home too. The biggest place is the home, and then it builds outside of that. It just goes outside of that. And again, if we can allow young girls as early as 3, 4 to understand that their self-worth is not connected to how my mom makes, or how I make my mother feel, or how I make my father feel, or how I make my auntie feel, how I make my brother feel. If we can help young girls understand that, and I'm guilty of it too. There are times that my nieces or nephews, for example, may not want to hug me, and I would feel sad, right? I would say, oh, but that's also a problem, right? That pressure starts really early on, particularly for girls. So therefore, we silence them so early on. So by the time they get to be 21, they've already been groomed by the society, outside the home, in the home, their own family. So therefore, to break that cycle, to break that identity given to them, it takes work. And I felt like that's what I had to do for a very long time. And it got really serious. It started in college. I remember I was having a conversation with a friend so long ago. And it stays with me. She's like, any woman, and this was a young woman, any woman who does not want to have a child or children is you know what? And I thought, wow, if she's thinking like that, right? Imagine others. I mean, she's in college, right? Imagine that pressure she went through, her mother went through. The ability to knowing that her education isn't enough, right? She must have children. Think about that pressure. So these are the things that we have to break. And this is why I've been very intentional when I said that very early on I decided children will be part of my life, whether if I have them or not. But when it comes to having them, I made a conscious decision. And I didn't know what I was saying then, but I think a lot of what I had experienced was a result of that. But clearly, after so much learning, now I'm a woman, I'm no longer a child. I've learned so much. There is more to all stories, all challenges that are out there. And I think the one way that we can break that cycle for women is to equip them with they are enough, what they feel is enough, is understood, particularly by their parents and their immediate family, because out there you can't control out there, right? But what the home, the environment that they come from is everything. And this is why the Lead and Earn program is essential. We start with the parents, we start with the community, but more importantly, we're saying, what can we do as a whole? Let's take responsibility in what we can offer. And I think that's where I'm playing my role, and I'm ready to play my role. I've been playing my role because I realized that this issue is so important to me. And my friend's like, why do you care about this thing so much? It's not so much there I care from the gender perspective, because if you think of generational things, what women are dealing with today is nothing compared to what their generations were facing before that. So I truly believe there's so much progress. But what is the point of that progress from an economic and social perspective when the so much beliefs, right, continue to build and affect the cycle differently, if that makes sense, right? So it went from economic power to women now having economic power, but it's also being exploited from other angles, whether it's, you know, women saying that we need better policies for parents. But can we drive this in terms of family? Can we reshape family life? Do I need to be a single mother because I'm a woman, I have to have no? Or do I need to be a single mother because there's pressure from my political constituents or representatives saying that, oh, our country, we need more children, we'll give you incentive to have more children, which is fine. If this is what you want, which is fine. But how much money can actually help break a cycle if that cycle is rooted in something deeper, which is self-identity, responsibility, self-worth? Like how much work can we put there to make sure that the cycle that we're creating is actually growing, right? Not creating a gap this big where some feel marginalized to the point where, you know, so much lives are being destroyed, particularly young children, where they're struggling, whether it's abuse and so forth. And I'm not saying this isn't always going to you know, with all the resources that we have or need. Let's say all women today, there's a policy that we put out there, we can legislate for it and say, hey, every woman before the age of 25 need to be able to demonstrate, or men too, for that matter, need to demonstrate that they are equipped to be a parent, so we don't continue to increase, or so many children can be influenced or affected by challenges that exist today. And I think that's something we can do, particularly as women. And so that's where I think, what does it take to actually lead in who you are? You have to be able to say, what matters to me? Yes, you're going to contribute to out there. But if you feel like someone owes you, or I need to pretend to live a certain life or act a certain way because of what's out there, You have to be willing to lose that, and that's a tall order for someone who may have 3 kids, struggling, doesn't have the means, and so forth. So anyhow, wanted to break this down because it's not easy, and this is why Women on Change, we're here to help you. We have a network of powerful people in my network that to help make it happen, to build that network of women that I believe is needed, and it starts with me, and I'm doing my part. Again, Lexima here, Women on Change founder, Lead and Earn program, which you must apply to be able to join us and see how we can help you. Okie doke. Thank you. Until then, cheers.